Hey everyone, it's Brody from Everythingboardgames. I was sent Home of the Brave that's coming on Kickstarter soon, so let's get it to the table. Home of the Brave is a pure political game about American politics. It plays from 2 to 5 players, and players will play as either a Democratic congresswoman, a Republican congressman, a social activist, a gangster, a journalist, or a business lobbyist. Each player has their own unique deck and need to accomplish different tasks related to their character to win. The game incorporates role-playing with variable player powers, with voting, hand management, and the first one to complete 4 of their individual tasks will win the game. The game is set up by placing the awesome board together. Each player will take their player board, their screen, and cards. The standee is placed on the first space on the path of bravery. Here you can spend bravery points during the game to move up on this track. This is important because the top 2 levels will each give you a star. Players win when you get 4 stars during the game. After you take your character, you will look at the back of your player board to see what resources you will start with and what domains that you will begin in. The domains are politics, media, business, society, and underworld. There is a level 1 area of the domain, which is where you place your tokens if you start in that domain. You can increase your level of any domain by actions during the game, and you will want to try to move to level 2 of as many domains as you can. There can only be 1 player at a time in the level 2 of each domain, and they are considered the leader of that domain. Being a leader has its benefits, which make certain cards in your deck stronger, or other players might ask you, being the domain leader, to permit them to receive a bonus. Remember, in the game, you are encouraged to negotiate and exchange favors and resources, form alliances, threaten and blackmail opponents, and so you'll make deals as the domain leader to allow different opponents to let them take certain actions, and players can always freely exchange resources during the game. Each player will place their 3 starting cards face up on the table, and each player will place their basic deck, advanced deck, and black file deck on the indicated areas of their player board. You will draw 3 cards from the basic deck and 2 from the goal deck. You will then shuffle the goals in within the basic deck and place it back on your player board. You will then deal out 1 of your black file cards from your deck to each of the other players, and you in return will have 1 card from each of the other players. The black deck cards are cards that can be played by other players only, and they will hurt you and affect you. You will want to try to keep these cards away from the other players and not hand them out. Other players can trade them with each other, and if a player gets 3 of the same cards, then their reward is significantly higher, and the result of them will significantly hurt you. The goal cards are ways that you can get a star. They won't be something that you can do at the beginning of the game, but something that you can plan with. Some of these cards you play and pay a lot of resources to get a star, while others you will play each round. You can tap the card, and when you have done it a certain amount of times, then that earns you a star. Some are earned with time, while others with resources. The voting cards are shuffled and placed on the board, and I'll explain these when we get to that. But the voting phase is the first phase, except you skip it in the first round. You will then place 4 supporter cubes, 1 of each color, onto the recess space, and take the 3 neutral cards from the deck and place them in the indicated areas. You will take the indicated number of starting supporters from the game depending on the number of players and place them inside the bag. You will then remove the indicated number and place that in the National Mall. Cubes are always taken from the National Mall during the game, and if cubes are ever added in certain actions, then you will first add your choice of cubes to the bag, and then the same number will be removed from the bag and placed onto the National Mall. There are 3 phases in the game: the voting phase, the action phase, and then the end of round phase. The first round voting is skipped. In the action phase, you will play and use your cards to gain more resources or make movement towards domains or other stars that you are intended to get. You will pay the resources on the card and play it from your hand. If you have a lightning bolt sign, then it's a one-time use card. Always look at the bottom of the card. If there is a domain leader of that type, you can always ask them to grant you an added bonus, or at least negotiate about it. And if you are the domain leader, then that's even better. If a card has an infinity symbol on the card, then that card can be tapped and activated once a round, so the ability can be used again and again. You can choose to pay the cost of a card from your hand and place it down and tap it, or you can tap an already placed down card that can be tapped. You can only have 4 of these cards down, and if another one is added, then you'll need to choose which one is discarded. If you pass a certain level on the bravery track, you will also be able to then have 5 of these cards in play at once. Similar, the cards with a person on it can be played and tapped similarly to the infinity symbol ones, and you'll be able to gain access to some of these cards after the round if they show up from the neutral deck. You can play a black file card or a set of another player's. You can discard a card from your hand, and instead of using the ability that's written on it, you can just discard it and get the action that's in the top right corner. These action consists of gaining supporters or moving up in a chosen domain. If you challenge someone already on a level 2 spot of a domain, you will have to battle for that spot. Each player will place any number of resources in their hand at the same time and will reveal it. The player that revealed the most resources will take that spot. All of these resources are lost even if you lost the battle. The new player will take the level 2 spot and the other player will drop down to the level 1. Another thing you can do is you can use your bravery points to move up on the path of bravery, unlocking what it shows on the right side of this path. Lastly, you can pass. After passing, you will not be able to come back and do any more actions. However, the first player that passes gets to pick a supporter cube or a neutral card of their choice from the recess. As players pass, there becomes fewer and fewer choices. Neutral cards can give you influentials, lobbyists, or legal acts that can help you and your agenda. But adding some of these cards might cause your voting to change. After everyone has passed, everyone can reset their horizontal cards to the normal vertical position and rotate any block cards from the upside down to the horizontal position. Each player draws 3 cards. Remember, you can get access to your advanced deck when you move up on the bravery track. Then you will pass the starting player marker to the next player clockwise. You will start over with the voting phase, and the starting player will discard any remaining neutral cards in recess and set out 3 new ones. Then they can add their choices of supporter cubes until they refill it up to 4. The top voting card is then drawn and read aloud to everyone. Most voting cards will have 2 possible results. Players will deliberate, discuss, and bribe each other to vote a certain way, and you will then vote by placing either the white disc or the black disc or no disc in your hand and revealing it at the same time. You are allowed to add any resources to your hand as well, which can help break a tie. The majority vote wins and the results are applied. The vote will also determine which color supporter cubes will be added into the bag and pulled from the bag to the National Mall. After voting, you will again take turns during the action phase and perform the end of round phase. As soon as at least one player has 4 stars, no more negotiations or trading is allowed, and the round continues until all players have passed. The player with the most stars wins, and if there is a tie, the player with the most stars and the most bravery points wins. This game is a very fun political game. When you're playing, you need to remember that it is a political game. And so, yes, sometimes it might seem like all players are going after you, or it might seem like different partnerships are getting formed. There is still strategy in the game, knowing when to attack and when to befriend someone. You also need to time your cards and your actions out the best you can so that you can take full advantage of what the action says. Each round is different when you play, and some rounds seem like your action cards didn't really do anything to push you along to progress. But then next round, you will draw some new cards and you might get some cards that have big actions on it, and it might make you feel like you caught up to the other players, or even maybe surpass them. And remember, all players have different opportunities because each player has a different deck. It seems like each character is a little bit more powerful with one type of resource than the others in the game, but cards in their deck really can help with this one resource to do very well, or also cards in that deck can change this big resource that they can collect and exchange it for other resources. If you love political games, this is a very fun political game. The best sentence I found that kind of explains what this game is about that I found in the rule book is this: players are encouraged to discuss, negotiate, exchange favors and resources, form alliances, threaten and blackmail opponents. Discussions can take place anytime among any players. If you play with a group who understand this game can become very fun and intense. Again, this is Home of the Brave, coming to Kickstarter on April 24th, so if you like what you see, then go back it.